Welcome to today's Explainer. Today we're looking at something every single one of us has faced at some point, that absolutely terrifying reality of an unexpected disaster striking right when we need to perform at our best. We're going to dive deep into a highly specific cognitive framework that elite competitors use to literally eliminate performance anxiety before an event even begins. It's a real game changer.
So picture this for a second. Have you ever prepared for months for a massive event? Maybe it's a huge presentation at work, a final exam, or a championship game, and then an absolute disaster strikes at the worst possible moment. Just imagine you're an elite archer competing in France, and 99% of an incredibly loud, screaming stadium is actively cheering for your opponent to win. Or imagine realizing right before you walk on stage that you barely slept the night before, or that a crucial piece of your equipment is completely broken.
And this right here is the core dilemma. On one hand, you've got your physical practice. You feel 100% ready, your skills are razor sharp, your training is completely done. But on the exact opposite side, you're facing this nightmare scenario where you were exactly 0% prepared mentally. It's a really jarring contrast, right? Feeling physically perfect, but experiencing the absolute helplessness of facing a sudden disaster you just never planned for.
All right, Section 1, the ultimate nightmare when preparation meets disaster. Because let's be honest, physical practice means absolutely nothing if chaos just derails you.
Moving on to Section 2, the panic spiral, and why our biology fails us. You see, most performers assume sheer talent is enough to survive chaos, but that is a major recipe for disaster.
So what happens when the unexpected hits and you don't have a plan? Well, you immediately get stuck in what's known as the what-if panic spiral. It's actually a biological default. Your brain goes into full panic mode. Instead of executing those finely tuned skills you've practiced forever, your mind gets entirely consumed by the crisis right in front of you. You start spiraling. What if the crowd gets louder? What if I fail? Without a mental map for all that chaos, your anxiety skyrockets, your focus completely shatters, and your performance just plummets.
Seriously, let me ask you this. What would you do if you were the world #1, heavily favored to win the world championships, and your bow literally blew up, like the string just snapped, on your very first practice shot? I mean, just imagine the sound, the shock, that immediate sickening rush of panic. There's no way around it. That is a very real nightmare. And it actually happened to a top competitor.
Which brings us to Section 3, the what-if protocol, or mapping the chaos. Because that elite athlete, she actually didn't panic at all. No, she calmly picked up a spare bow and kept shooting. Why? Because she had explicitly planned for that exact nightmare. To build this kind of bulletproof resilience, elite sports psychologists like Louise Jones utilize a cognitive framework called what-if scenario planning. It's basically a tool competitors use to anticipate chaos and detail exact responses to worst-case disasters. It is all about building a totally impenetrable performance mindset before you ever even set foot in the arena.
Okay, so how does it work? Well, about 3 weeks out from a major competition like the Olympics or the Commonwealth Games, athletes execute 3 specific steps. First, you sit down with your coach, you talk to other competitors, and you brainstorm absolutely everything that could go wrong. What if I didn't sleep? What if my equipment fails inspection? What if the audience is just incredibly loud? Second, right next to each of those scenarios, you write down exactly how you're going to deal with it. And third, you practice those responses.
Section 4. Simulating the chaos or practicing the unthinkable. Because just writing a plan down simply isn't going to cut it.
You have to actively and intensely simulate these disasters in your training environment. Your brain actually needs to experience the friction so it learns how to push through it. Now, obviously, you can't exactly rent out an Olympic stadium filled with 10,000 angry fans just to practice dealing with noise. So how do elite coaches simulate this? They resort to some wonderfully absurd methods. They will literally make your training buddies stand right behind you and scream for someone else while blasting loud music over the speakers. They might even force an athlete to practice while wearing only one shoe. I know it sounds crazy, but it's all about forcing the athlete to adapt to the ridiculous and the highly distracting.
But inevitably you have to ask, what if something happens that you absolutely didn't plan for? You could brainstorm for weeks, but the universe is incredibly creative at throwing curveballs. This is the reality of the totally unexpected disaster. And because of this, athletes actually create a generalized fallback plan just for these unmapped crises.
When that totally unmapped chaos hits, athletes use a really simple grounding routine to reset. First, they focus strictly on what they can control. Next, they take a deep breath. Then, they physically walk around the field or the room to physically and mentally reset themselves.
And finally, they return their focus entirely back to their goals. It sounds basic, but it literally prevents the panic spiral from taking root.
Now, athletes also use powerful mental imagery to protect their focus, often creating what is called a terminator bubble. You might visualize a thick protective shield surrounding you that allows absolutely zero negativity inside. Or you can use a physical anchor. For example, there's this elite archery coach named Michael who had a routine where the second he put on his shooting sunglasses, he mentally became the Terminator, just like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Completely bulletproof, totally focused, and utterly oblivious to anyone else around him.
All right, Section 5, be the best prepared, and the ultimate test. Let's look at one final super high-stakes proof of concept.
Get this. Did you know a top Dutch Olympic athlete shot a complete and total miss on his very first end of scoring at the Olympics? A 0. Absolutely nothing. I mean, just imagine the crushing weight of that moment. For most people, that single arrow would be the total end of their mental composure for the entire games.
But here is the incredible outcome. He didn't crumble. He just told himself that the absolute worst had already happened. And because he actually knew what to do next, based on his what-if plan, he just shrugged it off, got on with the job, and shot the next arrow. And honestly, in a really strange way, surviving that absolute nightmare scenario gave him the exact confidence he needed to go on and win a bronze medal.
And this is the ultimate takeaway for us today. In high-stakes environments, it is rarely the best athlete who ends up standing on the podium. It is almost always the best prepared athlete. The person who's mentally mapped out the chaos is going to outlast the one who relies on physical talent alone every single time.
So if you want to stop choking when things go wrong, you need to grab a piece of paper today, write down your worst what-ifs, and start building your very own Terminator bubble. Anticipate the chaos before it even happens. And I want to leave you with this final thought to chew on. What is your ultimate what-if nightmare in your own performance field? Drop it down in the comments. Let's discuss how you might map it out, and I really hope this explainer has empowered you to start preparing for the unthinkable. See you next time.